Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for spending Friday afternoon with us. Fortunately, I'm using my phone because I can't get the wireless internet to work here in our office. So anyway, my name is Emily Harman. I'm the director of the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs, and we're here today to talk with you about how to be procurement ready and how to control. So I have here today Chris Jones. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, I'm Chris Jones, the Deputy Director of Small Business at Naval Surface Warfare Center, Carter Rock Division, headquartered here in West Bethesda, Maryland. Who is Carter Rock? What do we do? Well, in a nutshell, we envision the future fleet, we create the fleet, and then we sustain the fleet. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. So various engineering, program and project management type of services, along with a wealth of IT-related services as well.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So I want to talk a little bit about how much the Department of the Navy spends in terms of money each year, how much we put on contract. So we obligate around $90 billion on contract in a fiscal year. It varies, the amount varies based on if we buy an aircraft carrier or if we buy some large quantity of aircraft, but that's about how much money we put on contract with large and small businesses as prime contractors. And then about little over $13 billion, about $13.5 billion of that 90 goes to small businesses as prime contractors. So, if you're a small business out there and you want to figure out, well, how do I get a piece of that pie? How do I find out about where the opportunities are to do a business with the Department of the Navy? And one of the reasons I'm having this Facebook Live is because a lot of people want to come in and meet with me. They think if they come in with me, meet with me, they got to come in and tell me about their capabilities, about what their company does, and then that will help them maybe get a contract, or I'll help them put them in touch with the right person. And the purpose of doing this video is to help make it easier for you to find the right person, because meeting with me isn't really the first person that you want to meet with. So the Department of the Navy has 10 different buying commands, and the first step is to figure out which one of those buying commands has a need or would be possibly interested in the product or service that your company sells. And you can go to our website. If you just Google Department of the Navy Office of Small Business Programs, you'll find helpful information on each of those 10 buying commands. And Department of the Navy includes the Navy and the Marine Corps. So we have 2 Marine Corps buying commands, and we have 8 that buy for the Navy. However, it's not always that simple, because if you're buying aviation, then the aircraft for the Marine Corps are bought by the Naval Air Systems Command. So it's not always straightforward as to who buys what you sell, but we do have helpful information on our website that will help you walk through that. So then there's a range of services and supplies that we buy. We buy program management support services, engineering services. We buy aircraft. We buy ships. We need to maintain our ships. We need to modernize our ships. If you read the National Defense Strategy, you'll see that we are really focused on making sure that the Department of Defense is lethal, that our equipment is ready to go, that it's modernized, that it's well maintained and ready to go anytime that we need it. And we're also looking at changing our business processes, making them more efficient, upgrading our IT systems. So there's a lot of opportunities in those kinds of areas. So Chris, what does it mean to you to be procurement ready? What does that mean? How can a company be procurement ready?
Well, of course, Ms. Harman, that's a loaded question because it looks in a multitude of ways. But the first thing that comes to mind is to ensure that you do your homework. Oftentimes, I receive requests from contractors, be it phone calls or emails, whereas a firm offers services that have nothing to do with Carter Rock in particular.
Okay.
As I mentioned before, we are very highly engineering and technically related. A lot of research and development goes on at Carter Rock. So, for example, someone calling in respect to offering janitorial services, right? I'm using pretty gross example, but it happens. The first thing that comes to my mind is that they may not be procurement ready, particularly as it relates to doing business with Carter Rock in particular. And that goes with any other Naval Surface Warfare Center or any other entity of the Navy.
Well, you guys have to have your buildings cleaned, right? You need janitorial services.
Yes.
So who should they be contacting if they sell janitorial services?
We have Naval NAVFAC.
Naval Facilities Engineering Command.
That's correct. And it goes back to doing your homework. Doing your homework. So being procurement ready, first of all, you have to know who to target, who to market, who you should be talking to. Ms. Harman just mentioned a lot of folks like to speak with the directors of these agencies or what have you. Well, truth be told, they are not the requirement owners, right?
Right.
They know where to go, but that's what myself and my peers and counterparts are out in the field activities for. That's what we're doing, to help facilitate that process, to point you in the right directions. So to piggyback, being procurement ready is to have already done that homework, conducted that homework, knowing where to go, and also, most importantly, knowing what to do after you get that information.
Well, how do you do that homework? Where do you start? I mean, I heard, would you say a Procurement Technical Assistance Center?
The PTACs are very helpful. They assist on the, obviously, developmental side of the house. That's an SBA resource partner. So there may be some technical aspects that you need to sharpen your pencils on. They help with proposal writing. They help with strategic marketing. They can assist with your business plans.
Right.
The information that's in your business plan, they can assist you with modifying it to ensure that you are not wasting valuable time, pretty much going down the road that you've exerted unnecessary time and energy and money to in respect to going after a particular opportunity or set of opportunities.
Right. So let's see. I have this little sheet of paper here. I don't know how it will work if I hold it up. If we turn the camera this way, are we showing up sideways on the? Yeah. So I can't turn the phone.
Okay.
Okay. So Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. If you just search on that term, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or if you go, you'll find a Procurement Technical Assistance Center in your area. So they're funded through cooperative agreements between the United States Department of Defense and state and local nonprofit agencies. They are located near you. There's over 300 Procurement Technical Assistance Centers across the country. And they put on workshops, seminars, and they teach you what you need to know, and they connect you with other small businesses as well. So a lot of times it's good, I think, Chris, wouldn't you say, to know other small businesses and learn from their mistakes, their best practices, things like that.
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
So PTACs can help with that. And they also conduct one-on-one counseling that's tailored to the specific needs of your business. And guess what? Free of charge. So I know that there are companies out there that will help you, but there's also government resources that are free of charge. Where you can, get registered in SAM, the system for award. What does it stand for? Management, and things like that. So I would definitely Google the term PTAC, Procurement Technical Assistance Center. Find one near you and go in and sit down and meet with them and see what kinds of services they can provide to help you be procurement ready. The Small Business Administration also has resources that can help you with, finding money for your, finding funding,
exactly.
Right, for your business. And they've got a lot of online resources, and then also SCORE, which is, free in-person counseling. So before you go spend money, look for the free resources that you have.
And a lot of people, Ms. Harman, do not know about SCORE, Service Corps of Retired Executives. And I must admit, I'd been a contracting officer for about 2 or 3 years before I got wind of it, and really didn't understand the breadth of what they offer until I started working at the SBA. But it's a vital resource. Most of their workshops are totally free. Some may come with a pretty nominal fee, $30, $40 on average, but it's totally worth the return on your investment.
Okay. Looks like we have about 20 participants, but no questions coming in so far. So I'd like to encourage you, if you have a question, I've got some folks here monitoring the Facebook Live, and they will definitely pass us the questions, and we will answer your questions if you have any as well. So, well, what if I'm a woman-owned small business? What kinds of things do I need to know about that program if I want to do business with the government? Does being a woman-owned small business help me?
Definitely. When SBA launched the full program about maybe 2 or 3 years ago,
right,
and codified it into the FAR, what have you, it truly offered a lot of viable opportunities for women-owned small businesses. Of course, those women-owned small businesses out there know that they must register in the repository, SBA's repository. There are other protocol-related matters that they have to adhere to as well in respect to a contracting officer ensuring that they utilize the program properly.
Right.
But there are a wealth of opportunities out there for women-owned small businesses. Inasmuch that a lot of contracting activities are actually posting requests for information and sources sought notices specifically to identify interested women-owned small businesses.
Well, okay, you brought up an interesting topic. Requests for information or sources sought. I see I hear companies say all the time, the government puts out on FBO.gov, they'll put out, we're looking for small businesses that can do this work, or we're looking to find out who can do it. But, my company's really small. I don't have time to respond to those. So is it really important that I respond? Because I don't always hear back. That's what I hear.
First and foremost, it's very important to respond. And to just a quick segue, if you cannot respond, ask or notify one of your main competitors, someone who may have the human resources to respond, to ensure that they do so, to hopefully allow that particular opportunity to be set aside. And hopefully by the time that it is, in this case, set aside for women-owned small businesses, you have the resources, the time, and monies or what have you to respond accordingly, be it to the solicitation or what have you.
How do you get involved in that? So the technical customer has a requirement, right? And they send it over to the contracting officer. The contracting officer says, well, where's your market research? And they say, well, we've done some, but we think it would be full and open. There's no small businesses that can do this work. So the contracting officer would probably involve you, and you'd say, let's look a little further and see. Let's put out this sources sought notice. So we're asking, it's kind of short. It's not a big proposal response, but you are sending back information on your company's capabilities.
Right.
And what happens next? They go into a black hole?
Well, speaking of the black hole, oftentimes special notices are posted without a contracting activity providing any meaningful feedback in respect to what determination and finding has been conducted. But what I've started to do, I reach out to those small businesses, in this case, women-owned small businesses, that I've met at outreach events, hence the importance of attending various outreach events, and other type of venues that offer the platform for you to meet one-on-one with government representatives, small business representatives. So that's what I do in particular.
Okay.
I reach out, be it a phone call, email, it may be both, depending on the magnitude and the severity of the requirement, and depending on the procurement history of that requirement.
Right.
Something else that we're planning to do at Carter Rock, I mentioned this to a few folks a month or so ago, we're starting to amend those notices.
The RFIs?
We are starting. Yes, ma'am. We are starting to amend them to let the men or women, in this case, women-owned small businesses, know that we have made a decision to set it aside for small business participation only.
You're communicating?
We are communicating. It's not required.
It's not required.
It's not required to let them know what decision we've made in respect to a set aside, but it makes good business sense,
right.
And it should be a best practice.
Well, when I was at NavAir, I know that what they used to do is they would send a response to the companies that had submitted a response to the RFI, and it might say, we had 3 women-owned small businesses submit, 2 service-disabled veteran-owned, 1 hub zone, and we analyzed them and we ended up deciding to go, service-disabled veteran-owned small business set aside or something like that. So I think it is good. There is a lot of emphasis on us the government communicating better with industry. So that's something I know that the Department of Navy folks are trying to do, is communicate better. So when the responses come in, then and they're reviewed, and the decision is made to go full and open competition, let's say, based on the responses, is that something that you would participate in that decision? They have to run it by you?
Oh, that's correct. Pretty much every requirement that exceeds $10,000, and this is per the defense, the DFARS, Defense Foreign Acquisition Regulation. Everything that exceeds $10,000, we have to, in essence, concur or not with that proposed strategy. So to touch on specifically what you mentioned about the full and open piece, if we do see something that the contracting officer is proposing to acquire under full and open competition, and we may have viable market research, or we have time to conduct additional market research, we can do so to hopefully purport or substantiate possibly setting it aside. Worst case scenario, as you know, we have another SBA resource partner, the PCRs, the Procurement Center representatives, who may step in depending on the estimated contract value, total contract value of that requirement. They may step in and recommend that we target a particular, all small businesses or a particular socioeconomic group, given the market research that they have in respect to that requirement.
So, it's there's some checks and balances within the government, within the federal government. So it might be that Chris's office feels that this should be a full and open competition on this particular procurement. They feel like they've done their research. Chris signs off. He says, I think that's good. But, the Small Business Administration also has to sign off on that. And they could come in and say, well, did you consider these companies? We really think it could be small business set aside. So there's some discussion on that. So we really consider thoughtfully whether or not a procurement should be set aside. And we don't do that to meet a goal. We do it because we feel that the companies can meet the requirement. Once a small business gets a contract, it's really important to be able to deliver on that contract. So here's a question that came in. They asked, how do I showcase my projects to the Navy? They had just tuned in. So we're talking about the Navy and the Marine Corps. How do I showcase my products? And that's one of the first questions we did discuss. I mean, companies want to come in and meet with me, or they want to go meet with the head of one of our 10 buying commands. We have small business professionals. That should be your first step. Go in and talk to the small business professional at that organization, and you can find them on our website. And if you have trouble reaching them, we have an email on our Department of Navy website. But each of the commands as well has a long-range acquisition forecast that's posted on their website that is saying the kinds of supplies and services they plan on buying over the next 2 to 3 fiscal years. So you can do some of your homework and find out what the command typically buys, which command should I market, which command does have a need for my supplies and services. And we're not going to buy something that you're selling just because you're a small business. You need to be meeting a requirement that we have. So, Chris, you may have gotten this question before. I represent a hub zone small business. I know the government's having trouble meeting hub zone goals, so why don't you award me a contract because I'm a company located in a hub zone? What would you say to that?
Well, as you just mentioned, we must have the need.
And the company didn't lead with what they do. They just led with I'm a hub zone company.
Right, and that's actually one of the many things that SBA and its resource partners, as well as myself and my peers, tell companies not to do. Never lead with your certification. Yes, we have goals, and yes, we have not met historically the hub zone numbers over the past years in particular, recent years in particular, but it's about the mission.
Right.
It's about the mission needs. It's about accomplishing that mission, obviously, and we are not solely trying to accomplish that mission via hub zone in this case, or women-owned, or whatever the case may be. Now, if you have the requisite core competencies in respect to a need, a bona fide need that we have, of course we will entertain it. And of course there are avenues to help get you guys in front of the right personnel to help make that decision.
And the way to find out what we need or what our commands by is to go on, do your homework. If you think that you want to sell something for ships, Google Navy ships, and probably the Naval Sea Systems Command will come up. Or you can just go to our Department of Navy Office of Small Business Programs website and do your homework, because we have each of those 10 buying commands listed there, and we have a number for the small business professional. So once I was working I like to tell stories to help get our point across. Once I was working at the Naval Air Systems Command, and I was the head of small business there, and a small business came in and was taking my time for a meeting, and they said, do you guys still do testing on this base? Okay, well, if you are down at Pax River, Maryland, you see airplanes flying all over the sky. That's what we do at Patuxent River, Maryland. So coming in and saying that to me is one thing. It does tell me that you haven't done your homework, because you don't know with whom you're meeting. You don't know what the command does. And it's typically it's kind of okay. It's forgivable, if you're saying that to a small business professional. But if you go into a technical customer and say that, or if you go into a technical customer and say, what do you need, and act like you can give them whatever they need. My company does everything. Right. No. That's not too good, because we're kind of risk averse.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay. Small business set-aside bids are made, and then amendment comes out saying they're no longer set aside. Why? In some cases, I cannot answer a question that's general like that. I would have to know the specifics, wouldn't you? Because there could very well be a reason. They might have put it out as small business set aside and no bids came in, and then they had to go back as full and open.
And unfortunately, that happens quite often, especially with certain types of requirements. But I haven't experienced that personally.
Okay.
Thankfully. But yes, to your point, I can see that happening in that type of environment.
So that's why it's really important when we do our market research and we do our requests for information, and we feel like there's going to be two or more. We have good reason to believe that there's going to be two or more small businesses that are capable, that are going to be able to meet our requirement, that are going to bid, and then they don't bid.
Ms. Harman, I would say that will very, very seldomly happen for this point, because if there's still one viable small business, we can justify awarding to that business, one business. To totally change the solicitation type to say full and open or something else, but full and open in particular, yes, few and far in between.
Right. So we'd have to know more details on that, and you can certainly send them to me. My email address is Emily, EMILY, .Harman, HARMAN, @Navy.Bill. Here's a question on multiple award contracts. It seems that many agencies are moving towards multiple award contracts. Does U.S. Navy offer anything like this, or will they? Yes. That's another thing that I think is important, is to figure out how the customer that you're going to market buys what you sell.
Big time. Because
in some cases, it might be via a multiple award contract. In some cases, they might go to the General Services Administration.
Exactly.
So you can do research on that yourself by using the Federal Data Procurement System, Next Generation. That's another thing I would Google, Federal Data Procurement System, Next Generation, and look at Easy Search. And fiddle around with that, and maybe we have a session coming up. Maybe we'll do a Facebook Live session on that where we can show you how to use it. But you can do some research on what the command that you want to market has bought in the past and how they've bought it, if it's been on a multiple award contract or not. And your small business professional can help with that too.
Exactly, yes.
One of the biggest multiple award contracts that the Department of Navy uses is Seaport E. And I would just Google Seaport-E, and you'll see that we have a draft RFP on the street for that big multiple award contract, and it's not for products, but it's for professional services. So definitely understanding how a command buys what you're trying to sell is very important. And so regarding the loss of a set-aside, what if you bid on it before the amendment came out?
kind of the cost of doing business, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Unfortunately.
It is unfortunate, but let me just say that I think one of the things that we're trying to do within the federal government is better understand industry. And
right.
I kind of emphasize that we need to understand how our behavior impacts industry. And I have had, run into several people that have retired from the government, and then when they're working for a company and they say, "Oh, I wish I had known, I might have done things a little differently. I wish I had known."
Yes.
Better understood the challenges that companies face. And so more and more commands are doing these things called reverse industry days, where instead of the government up on the stage telling industry something, the industry is telling us something. And I think this is, something that could be covered in that reverse industry day. Okay, I submitted my proposal in, and then you issued an amendment that that canceled the requirement or made it not small business set aside, So that's something that we can.
I think Carter will plan to host one of these reverse industry days sometime soon. Don't
really
quote
good.
me on that, but it is very productive, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about them.
Mm-hmm. The key with those reverse industry days is making sure the government employees go and attend it, because really it's the program managers, contracting officers that need to hear that and have an interaction. I went to one of those in Charleston, and I know that they're having one in Norfolk. I think it's on the 6th of June. There's an industry group down there that's putting on a reverse industry day.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Oh, another resource that we have on our website is this 10 steps to doing business with the Department of the Navy. So that's on our website, and we also have on our website, and most other organizations do too, a list of frequently asked questions. So it's also helpful. That's part of doing your homework, is looking at those frequently asked questions.
Exactly.
So let's see. Do we have any more questions coming in? We have another one coming in.
On FPDS.
Please repeat the name of the website you just mentioned. Right. Federal Procurement Data System, Next Generation. So FPDS-NG, or Federal Procurement Data System, Next Generation. And what you can do, anybody can get an account on there. Within the Department of Defense, if you're a government employee, we can get an account and see things just as they're awarded. Whenever the contracting officer posts it real time. For you, there'll be a 90-day delay.
Yes.
And there's an easy search section on there, and it tells you how to search through that data and figure out who's buying what you sell. By NAICS code, product service code. So the purpose of the site, you want to explain a little? Are you familiar with FPDS-NG?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And I believe it's fpds.gov.
.gov, okay.
Yes, .gov.
NG.gov? Okay. Google it and you'll find it.
Google it.
Yeah, just Google. Google, you can find anything. Yes, I am familiar with.
So how does information
FPDS.
get put in it, and what's it used for?
Well, it's it pretty much gathers all of the government contracts outside of the intelligence community. As Ms. Harman mentioned, it's real time for us. It's a 90-day delay for you guys, but there's a wealth of information. The amount of specificity in respect to the type of requirement, obviously, the dollar value of the final contract award, contract type. I mean, there's all types of information that's gathered in this database that can truly help you guys better market to a particular agency.
So you might search on your NAICS code that you do business in. I don't know, 541330. That's the main one I remember. Engineering services. You might search on that and figure out, oh, okay, these commands buy under that NAICS code, and this is how much money they spend under that NAICS code. And this command spent $1 last year. This command spent $500 million. I think I'll go market this command because there's more opportunity there.
Yes.
Let me get the contract that was awarded. Let me go. So here's the contract number. I can see that in FPDS-NG, and I'd like to see what that contract says. So let me go to the website and under the Freedom of Information Act, request a copy of that contract. I can see the statement of work. Some of it might be the information, like the cost data might be redacted. And I can see that the contract is going to be recompeted in 3 years, so I can position myself for my company to get that contract.
Exactly.
I see a question that came in, why is the data delayed? Well, think about what the mission of the Department of Defense is. And if we're going out and buying a big quantity of certain items, it might give an indication that we're planning on some big exercise, and we might not want to communicate that to the world. So there's a 90-day delay for that reason.
Exactly.
So, okay. So hopefully that answered your questions on FPDSNG, but give us feedback on what other topics that you want us to cover during this or future events. So here's a question. What is DON doing relative to other transaction authority, and what should women-owned small businesses do? So other transaction authority is an authority that the federal government has, the Department of Defense has, to award contracts to or other transactions to companies that are like non-traditional suppliers, companies that we haven't typically done business with. The purpose is to get to some real innovation. And it's not, the contracts or the agreements are not awarded under the federal acquisition regulations. They're awarded using this other transaction authority. So all of the terms and conditions that we typically put in our voluminous government contracts don't apply. You're kind of starting from a scratch sheet of paper.
Exactly.
So each command has some OTA authority, I believe. The best thing is to talk to that small business professional and figure out, are they using OTAs? For example, we would not use an OTA to buy, program management services or IT services, but we might use an OTA to, we find a real cool unmanned system out there that we think that we need, and we might go on contract to prototype it, something like that. So. Hopefully that answers your question.
We haven't toyed with OTAs a lot, but I know there's some discussion about it.
Right, that's definitely happening. So that I think OTAs are in FPDSNG, and if you need help on finding that, we can help you with that. I think they have a G in the contract title, and you can kind of figure out who's awarding OTAs. In some cases, the Navy customer might send their money to the Army to put on contract with an OTA. So that's another thing that kind of makes it hard, is sometimes a Navy customer might not have, a Navy contracting office might not buy that product or service. We might NIPR the money, an intergovernmental transfer, and send it to another organization who puts it on contract for us. And I think that we have been using some of the Army's OTA contracting officers out of Picatinny Arsenal for some of our requirements. But okay. So anything else that you wanted to cover, Chris, while you're here? Anything that you think we missed? And then we'll bring Deb Weems on.
Just to quickly piggyback on what I said initially regarding just doing your homework. You mentioned it several times as well. You must, we cannot reiterate and foot stomp it enough to do your homework to better target and market a particular agency. The Department of Defense is huge.
Yeah.
The Department of the Navy is huge in so many components within the Navy. Naval Warfare Center, there's 7 of us or so of us. We are one of the 10 major buying commands. So just think of the brevity of requirement activity and contracting activity that goes on. So you need to really do your homework again to better target which entity within the Navy, or in our case, the Naval Surface Warfare Center, that you need to target and target your services or commodities to.
Right.
So I would say I would foot stomp that again. Reach out to the requisite small business specialist at a given agency, or in this case, component, and express your interest. Take a look at those long-range acquisition forecasts. And if there's anything that fits your wheelhouse, your core competencies that you can render those services or commodities for, express your interest to those POCs that are listed.
Right.
We don't know what you're doing if you don't communicate it with us.
Right, if you don't communicate. So FPDS-NG, or that Federal Procurement Data System, can be a little confusing, and I do know that that's something that the PTACs, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers that we mentioned earlier, will do for you. They'll sit down and teach you how to use FPDS-NG, and they can pull out some reports for you and help you figure out where you should market. When you come to a small business professional for the federal government, you should already be, like we were talking about, procurement ready. You should have already done your homework. We're not going to do your homework for you. So in helping you do your homework, you can go to the Small Business Administration, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and ideally when you come to us, you've already looked at FPDS-NG, you've looked at our website, you've looked at the long-range forecast, and you can say, Chris, I know your command has a challenge in this area because I just saw your commanding officer speak the other day at an industry outreach event, and I heard him say we've got this challenge and my company does this and we can help you. We can help the command. The wrong way to do it is to say, Chris, I represent a service-disabled veteran in small business. What are your needs? Okay.
And we hear that so
You hear it a lot. And that, we keep saying, do your homework. And the reason we have to keep saying it is because companies are not doing their homework. And when you don't do your homework, it leads people to feel like you're probably not going to do your homework if we give you a contract.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
How are you going to perform on the contract are you looking for a handout, or are you looking to help us accomplish our mission?
Right. And Ms. Harman, I'd like to add one more thing. We mentioned responding to those special notices, RFIs, particularly source of sought notices. Please respond. If you cannot respond, have someone else respond in your stead. We need that information. I, myself, and my peers need that information to substantiate a particular set-aside. If we do not have it and you have the requisite skill sets or competencies to perform, it's all for naught.
Yeah. And if you can't do all the work, let's say it's, we're put out a request for information and we're looking for companies that can do this work. And let's say you feel like you can do 70% of it, but your company's not capable of doing all of it. You have to do, if we do a small business set aside, you have to do the 51% rule, right? The limitations on subcontracting. So you have to be able to do half of it if you can communicate in your source of sought response that we can do these tasks and we've got this teaming partner that we'll team with to do these other tasks, and that would be something that we could probably set aside. You don't have to do 100% of the work.
And I know at Carter Rock we have that verbiage in our notices, particularly in our solicitations as well. If you are planning to partner up, strategically team with a particular entity or multiple businesses, not just small but other businesses, communicate it. Let us know, but especially in that market research phase.
Right.
It gives us the warm and fuzzies, especially our technical components, the warm and fuzzies that you would be able to render those services if you were given the opportunity to perform.
And engage early, because I've seen sometimes it happens where we've done our market research, we feel like we know that this is going to be full and open competition, we haven't found any small businesses that can do the work. Then at the last minute, like the day before we're getting ready to release our RFP, company comes in and says, I can do it, you should set it aside. And that makes it really challenging because it takes so much work to put together an RFP. That just makes it really challenging. So engage with us early, so I think that was our questions. Let's see, challenges of SAR packets. Process is too lengthy and only allows firm to bid and then must procure separate certification. Any way around this? I don't quite understand that question. Do you have that again, Deb? Or
SAR.
Process is too lengthy and only allows a firm to bid.
As an MRO, one of our challenges is SAR packages, and the requirement is for the development of a trevere, which an OEM does not have to do and will never be used.
Okay, there's a lengthy question about a SAR. You probably need to just email me that question, or I'll get online afterwards. I'll spend my weekend looking through your questions that you posted and see if I can answer them. And if I can't, I'll tell you to email me, because I don't know the question, the answer to that question off the top of my head. So, well, thank you very much, Chris. Now we're going to have
You're
Deb
welcome.
Weems.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Okay, I see a question here. It said, did I hear you correctly? Did you mention NavAir purchases technology for the Marine Corps? Yes. So NavAir buys helicopters for the Marine Corps. NavAir buys the Joint Strike Fighter for the Marine Corps. So it's naval aviation, and naval includes Navy and Marine Corps. So this is Deb Weems. Deb, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Debbie Weems. I'm the Deputy Director for Small Business Programs at Indian Head EOD Technical Division. EOD is Unexploded Ordnance Disposal, so we do energetics on our installation.
That's interesting, though, but you're under the Naval Sea Systems Command.
We do energetics for ships, submarines,
Okay. Okay.
deckside.
Okay. Located in Indian Head, Maryland.
Yes, ma'am.
So how was your commute coming up here today?
Well, it wasn't during rush hour.
Yeah.
So it was not too bad.
We're broadcasting from the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And there's a Nats game tonight. I don't know if there's any Nationals fans online.
I was
but...
very lucky to find a parking space.
So, let's see. As a small business owner, and some of this, we might be touching on the same questions, but just in a little different way. So as a small business owner, how do I find out what the Navy and the Marine Corps is even planning on buying?
If you go to the Navy, Google Department of the Navy Small Business Office, and there's what's called a Long Range Acquisition Forecast, LRAF. It has all the requirements that the Navy has planned to make in the next 2 to 3 years. And it gives a quarter in which the solicitation or the requirement might come out on the web. And there'll be a pre-solicitation come out. And you just watch in FedBizOps, or if you're registered in Seaport E, because all of our engineering services are required to be purchased from Seaport E. And unless you have a waiver, or unless it's something that Seaport E doesn't cover. So what we do is put all our requirements out there and then people email us at the small business deputies and say, okay, I see this out there. Do you have a time frame? If it is already solicited, all we can give you is the number, the location,
number.
and then if you have questions, you have to either submit your questions online or submit them to the contracting officer or contract specialist in order to get your answers.
Right. So I've seen instances where a command might have a particular procurement listed on their long-range acquisition forecast, and they say, we're going to buy these services, we're going sole source. And I've had, seen cases where companies will say, I don't think it's sole source. Why is it sole source? I can do this work. Let me come in and talk with you. And then there have been cases where we said, oh, maybe it's not sole source. We could compete this. Or, they'll say, well, I see that you're going to go full and open competition on this procurement. And I am a hub zone small business. And my friend Sam here works with a hub zone small business, and we both do similar work. We can compete on this. Would you consider setting it aside for hub zone? So if someone came to you with that, what would you do?
I would go to my contracting officer and say, I've got 2 companies who want to have us set aside for hub zone. Could you run it through your requirements folks and have them have their credentials checked out and see if they do have a good possibility, and if we could set it aside for hub zone.
Right. So you might do some research on the website of those companies. You might look at what they've done in the past. So you want to make sure that you feel that they could do the work.
I look them up in SAM first and make sure they're registered.
The System for Award Management.
Yes, System for Award Management. I make sure that their reps and certs, the representations and certifications in there show that they are indeed a hub zone, and what the NAICS codes are that their company handles. And then I'll take that information and forward it to the contracting officer so that they can contact the requirements branch and see if that's a possibility.
Right. And sometimes it's not a possibility. Just because you call us, we might say, well, the requirement, what you saw on our spreadsheet long-range acquisition forecast doesn't tell you the whole meat and potatoes of the requirements.